Today we're going to talk about Trump's disastrous tariff implementation and, importantly, the not-so-subtle reason that he's okay with the results. And I've got two interviews this week. I sat down with PodSafe America's Tommy Vtor to discuss the market crash and data scientist Elliott Morris to discuss the implications of the Wisconsin Supreme Court race victory as we head toward midterms. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're watching No Lie. It's clear by now that Trump's imposition of tariffs has been a disaster. The market has crashed, wiping away all gains since Trump took office. Companies are laying off employees by the hundreds. Fears of a recession are reaching a fever pitch. And far from spooking other countries into coming to the negotiating table, they're actually going around the United States and entering into new trade agreements without us, including, by the way, with China. New reporting suggests that Japan and South Korea are teaming up with China to respond to our tariffs imposed by Trump. Because that's apparently what we want right now. At a time when American superiority is threatened by China, Trump is driving other countries into the arms of China. But it's also true that Trump's uniquely and acutely aware of how damaging high costs can be. He himself admitted after the election that the reason that he won was because costs were too high. In fact, we've spoken about this for months. This global phenomenon of high inflation, and therefore high costs, is responsible for nearly every incumbent government across the globe losing majorities or outright losing power themselves. And so, given how disastrous these tariffs are on the economy, and given how potent the issue of high costs are, it would lend itself to reason that Trump would want to avoid this like the plague. Even for somebody who needs to protect his ego and can't bring himself to admit fault because he views any capitulation as a sign of weakness, even he can see how disastrous this is and should want to cut his losses as quickly as possible. So the question becomes, why barrel ahead? The answer is that Trump doesn't care, because what he stands to gain is greater than what he stands to lose. He wants blanket tariffs on every country in hopes that, in an effort to remove them, the countries each offer to give him something. And that something usually stands to benefit him personally. Like, think about where he's employed this strategy already. The law firms, for example. He imposes blanket punishment on them through his use of an executive order, and then one by one they capitulate to get themselves off his bad side. And that capitulation includes giving him between $40 million and $100 million in pro bono legal services. And by the way, you better believe that they're also not going to go after him anymore in the courts. That means that he has neutralized them. He owns them. And in turn, one of the most damaging sectors for him, the courts, suddenly becomes a little bit more friendly. Or how about the news networks capitulating? You've got ABC News, possibly CBS doing the same thing with 60 Minutes, both involved in settling these frivolous lawsuits. You think those networks are going to be as hostile after paying him millions and millions of dollars? Probably not. How about the tech billionaires? You've got Mark Zuckerberg immediately revamping Meta's content moderation policies and moving its fact-checking from California to the much more neutral state of Texas. Jeff Bezos also neutered his own Washington Post. He spent $40 million on a Melania Trump documentary that I'm sure tens of people enjoyed watching. And we can go on, but it's the same strategy over and over. Trump preemptively targets the entities or people who threaten him, knowing that the only way they can crawl out of that hole that he's placed them in is if they capitulate and give him something that benefits him. It's worked with law firms and media companies and tech billionaires and universities, and now he's doing it with literally every country in the world. He wants them to beg, because whatever they give him in response to that begging will ultimately benefit him. This isn't just getting some university somewhere to capitulate. It is getting a world leader on behalf of an entire country that is valuable for him. Certainly more valuable as far as he's concerned than the pain that he's causing. Because remember, the pain that he's causing doesn't impact him. So at the end of the day, he doesn't give a shit. He doesn't need to rely on his 401k. He's not drawing from his 401k. He doesn't need to worry about high costs from the tariffs. He doesn't have to worry about the impacts to housing or rent or groceries or cars or electronics or food. None of that impacts him. He's a billionaire who doesn't pay for anything. You all suffering is a price that he's willing to have you pay. And so he'll wait for these other world leaders to petition the king and grovel with their offerings that will ultimately expand his own power and his own influence. All the while, we are the collateral damage. We all get thrown under the bus. 350 million people suffer so that one man can benefit. This is the story of Trump's presidency. Donald Trump looks out for one person, Donald Trump. But here comes the hopeful part. We are all wise to his plan. There's a reason, for example, that the Trump administration decided to revoke the nomination of Elise Stefanik to be UN ambassador. It's because they were afraid that Republicans would lose a seat in a district that Trump himself won by 21 points in November. And they saw what happened in Wisconsin, where Trump-endorsed conservative candidate Brad Schimmel lost by 10 points in a 50-50 state. They saw what happened in Florida, where even though Democrats lost 2 seats, they saw an average 16-point swing to the left. And now they have seen millions and millions of Americans take to the streets just this past weekend. And this matters. It matters because this administration derives its power from the perception that it is untouchable, that it can act with impunity. The fact that Americans are standing up and turning out and fighting back threatens all of that, threatens their entire power structure. I know that it doesn't feel like we have much to celebrate right now, but the energy, the momentum, and the enthusiasm is only on one side right now, and it's not Donald Trump's. Next up are previews of my interviews with Tommy Vtor and Elliott Morris. Just one quick note, as always, just one video per week on this channel has sponsors, and that is my video podcast, No Lie, same as my audio podcast. So here's a quick word from some sponsors, and then the interviews with Tommy Vtor and Elliott Morris. No Lie is brought to you by Beam. In today's America, every day feels like a barrage of news that keeps you up at night. Rights under attack, chaos dominating the headlines, and honestly, the people benefiting from this chaos are counting on you being too tired to push back. But here's the thing, rest is resistance. You can't stay in the fight for what's right if you are running on empty. That's why I'm excited to tell you about something that's truly changed the game for me, Beam's Dream Powder. I found myself endlessly scrolling throughout the latest outrage, my mind racing every single night, and every morning doing the exact same thing. And I was feeling exhausted as the result of that. I was completely burned out, like I was falling behind on everything that matters. But then I started using Dream and everything changed. Dream helps me sleep through the entire night. No more tossing, no more turning, and I wake up feeling refreshed, not groggy. It's become a must in my nighttime routine, helping me recharge so I can get up and stay engaged in what matters most. So what makes Dream so effective? It's packed with a powerful blend of all-natural ingredients that actually works. Reishi, known for its calming properties, magnesium, which supports deep restorative sleep, L-theanine, an amino acid that helps you relax without feeling drowsy, apigenin, which supports falling asleep faster, and melatonin to help regulate your natural sleep cycle. It's designed to help you fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and wake up feeling clear and focused. And the best part, no grogginess. Unlike other sleep aids that leave you feeling sluggish, Dream lets you wake up energized, sharp, and ready to take on the day. Oh, and did I mention, it tastes incredible. Smooth, delicious, and easy to add to your nightly routine. It is simple, effective, and it works. Here's the deal. Beam is giving No Lie listeners an exclusive 40% off. That's right, 40% off their best-selling Dream Powder, but only for a limited time. All you need to do is go to shopbeam.com/BTC and use code BTC at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/BTC and use code BTC for 40% off. Because let's be honest, you can't stay in the fight if you're too tired to show up. Rest well, wake up ready, and keep pushing for progress. Rest is resistance. No Lie is brought to you by Armor Colostrum. So why are elite athletes, business moguls, and high performers using Armor Colostrum? Armor Colostrum is nature's first whole food with over 400 bioactive nutrients working at the cellular level to build lean muscle, accelerate recovery, and fuel performance, all without artificial stimulants or synthetic junk. Whether you're running a business, training hard, or just want an edge, Armor optimizes your body for peak output. I have a tendency to eat poorly, especially when I'm stressed, and these are kind of stressful times. The benefit for Armor Colostrum is that it fortifies gut health. That combats bloating, it makes me feel lighter. Probiotics are often touted as the gut health solution, but they only address one part of the 4-part gut wall, and most products on market are dead before they even reach your gut. Armor Colostrum naturally fortifies your entire gut wall system, optimizing your microbiome and strengthening the gut wall architecture, which can guard against irritants that can trigger symptoms like bloating and constipation. And beyond that, it also strengthens immunity, ignites metabolism, vitalizes hair growth, enhances skin radiance, and fuels performance and recovery. We've worked out a special offer for my audience. Receive 15% off your first order. Go to tryarmor.com/BTC or enter BTC to get 15% off your first order. That's tryarmra.com/BTC. Trump left office with probably one of the worst economic environments in modern American history. He had a 2.5% contraction of the economy. The unemployment rate was at 6.3%.
Yep.
He had lost 2.9 million jobs. And people still do think back to the first Trump term with rose-colored glasses. And so do we risk being in a scenario where the same thing happens, where we are watching the stock market crash in real time and all of our trading partners alienate us around the world, and yet there is just such a massive disconnect between Earth One, where we all live, and what the Trump cult thinks about dear leader, that this might be a thing where it doesn't even stick, in very much the same way that people think that Trump presided over some gangbusters economy, when again, it was the worst economy that we'd had since, the Great Depression.
Yeah, look, there's risk. And also, we just don't know what could happen. There could be some exigent event that completely changes the conversation, that redefines our political reality, a terrorist attack, a natural disaster,
right.
God help us, right? Though, with respect to the economy in Trump's first term, I think most voters understand that the pandemic was this once-in-a-lifetime thing, and that is why the economy crashed, people got laid off, the economy contracted, the stock market went down, right? They didn't really blame him for that.
Yeah, they gave him a pass for that.
Right, in this case, he is crushing the U.S. economy by choice.
Right.
And there's no hiding that.
That's the perfect point. I mean, this is the first recession that we will enter into that is both unilateral and completely voluntary.
Right.
And it's coming off the heels of a gangbusters economy that we were in that was inherited by Joe Biden. I mean, we had God knows how many months of job growth and hundreds of thousands of jobs added on a monthly basis, around 4% unemployment, which is roughly at a 50-year low, and a record high stock market, and took all of those things and kind of threw them away because he decided that he wanted to feed his ego and try and show everybody that he's a tough guy.
Right.
And I think the most ironic part of all of this is he was so certain that every other world leader would capitulate because he has such a distorted perception of how the people around him act, because he is surrounded by the most groveling, sycophantic, obsequious hangers-on with their mouths latched onto his ass. And so that really screws with how somebody perceives the people around them. And then he comes across people like Emmanuel Macron and Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, and they're like, fuck this guy.
Yeah, I mean, one thing Trump has done is reawaken nationalism in a lot of countries where we hadn't seen it in a while. The Canadians are furious, and they should be. I mean, he's joking about annexing the country. He's literally trying to crush their economy through tariffs. So these people hate him. And the political incentives for someone like Mark Carney are to fight Trump tooth and nail, to not cut a deal, to look tough. And so, I think...
And by the way, he is almost single-handedly rescuing the Liberal Party in Canada.
He has, absolutely. Trudeau was dead in the water. People thought the Conservatives were going to win by 10 or 20 points, and now it's a dead heat. And I do think, the other opportunity here for us is, despite all of Trump's inroads with blue-collar workers and his man of the people bullshit, the guy has 13 billionaires in his cabinet. He spends his weekends at his private golf club. Right now, I think he is at a Saudi-run live golf event at his club instead of attending a dignified transfer ceremony for 4 U.S. service members who were killed overseas in Lithuania in a training accident. It's moments like that that tell us who this guy is, and those are the ones we have to uplift and make sure that voters who don't pay attention to politics actually see them.
So I want to dig into what we saw yesterday. Obviously, we had a few elections, Wisconsin and Florida. So what does the Democratic overperformance look like, and what does that tell us more broadly about the political environment that we're in right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. These special elections and off-year elections are helpful because they can point us to trends we might see in the midterms. So it's a good thing to focus on. In Florida, we saw 2 congressional district special elections last night to fill districts that were vacated. In the first district, there is a 16 percentage point overperformance for Democrats. So what that means is that Donald Trump won one of those districts by 30 points last year. And the Republican candidate only won by 14 last night. So that's a 16-point swing in that district. In the next one, there was a 22-point shift, and that was in a redder district, Florida's first congressional district. So what we're seeing here...
Which is Matt Gaetz's former district, by the way.
Matt Gaetz's former district. That's right. The other one is vacated by Mike Waltz. So what we're seeing here is that there's some change in the electorate. Either people are changing their mind against the administration, we can talk about why, or Republicans aren't turning out as much as they were previously, or some combination of the two. We also saw this last night in the Wisconsin Supreme Court race, where Susan Crawford beat Brad Schimmel by about 10 points in the final count, which is also an 11-point shift from 2024 when Kamala Harris lost it by 1 point. So in the Wisconsin race, more Republican precincts in the state had much lower turnout. So those Republicans, we think, are just tuning out from the electorate, giving Democrats the ability to do well. And even in Democratic areas, the Democrats and liberal candidates are overperforming.
And how did those relate to what we saw last week? I know we don't have a lot of data points here, but we do have Florida and Wisconsin yesterday. Last week, we had 2 special elections in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is generally a pretty good state to glean some information from because it's a battleground state.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, at this point, we have data from both battlegrounds, Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. And in this Pennsylvania district, I believe Senate District 36, that's the state legislative district, the Democratic candidate also did 16 points better than Kamala Harris did in 2024. So we have data from those swing districts. And then we also have data from a very, very red districts in a red state, Florida. And they're all showing the same thing, which is a combination of Republicans tuning out from politics, tuning out from supporting the administration. I mean, if they don't vote, like you can say maybe they'll vote next time, but they're not voting. And that's the important thing right now. And that's the important thing for the midterms. And then you also see independents and Democrats moving even more supportive of left-leaning candidates. So that should portend pretty good Democratic performance for 2026 if that holds.
To watch the full interviews with Tommy and Elliott, click the thumbnails right here on the screen or check out the interviews playlist on my YouTube channel. You can also click the thumbnail on the screen to listen to the audio version of this episode, and of course to see more of my content, the subscribe button's on the screen as well.